Hello, 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 and welcome. You are listening to Sons of Ours podcast. My name is Ian Wintering.
And I am Micah Flores.
That is right. You are listening to the Micah Flores on the other side of this wonderful table. It's good to have you back, Micah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it this week. I don't think I've been on the podcast for about 6 weeks now or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, meanwhile, I've been on almost every episode since then. Really quick, I just want to apologize to the listeners. So we've been through a lot. It's been super crazy the past month, really.
Yes.
Midterms
crazy.
week was crazy, and then obviously Micah was out of commission for a while. We'll talk about that in a minute, but so we missed a couple weekends of episodes, but just kind of expect that to be the norm from now on. So
it was really funny this week. Someone was like, "Oh, Micah, are they going to have you on the podcast this week or something?" And Tony looked at him and was like, "Micah's one of the hosts." And I was like, yeah, me and Ian founded the podcast. What do you mean?
You just haven't been in so long.
Yeah, and it's just like I just have been out of commission, and so much has happened. And even before that, I don't know what it was. It was like really busy leading up to the conception tournament too.
Right.
So it was like, I remember one day it was like we had practice and we were going to record that day, but I ended up not being able to, and Tony came on and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was just me and Tony. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, but we've gained a whole new fan base that has never even heard a podcast with you in it yet.
Right, yeah. Well, it's really good to be back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's something about just like being able to sit down, have a good conversation, be really intentional.
Right.
Just try to invite other people into the life of grace and the life of the seminary, and what God's been up to,
Yeah.
So
yeah, we're actually we're recording this episode on the road actually, so we're not in the studio as normal because Micah is crippled, and so we had to bring the studio to him.
So we're sitting in the basement of one of the seminary houses now.
That's right.
Yep. So it's pretty good though. Everything worked out pretty well. Good makeshift studio for sure. Yeah. Hopefully the guys in the house aren't making too much noise tonight.
Right. But yeah, so for those listeners that maybe don't know, like what happened, like why don't you, Micah, just really quick fill us in on where you've been, the past month,
Yeah, so like I said, we had the seminary soccer tournament out in Conception, Missouri at Conception Seminary College. And so leading up to that, I was organizing the tournament from our end, so I didn't have to do any of the logistics, obviously, of like what was going on for the whole weekend, but just making sure that our team was taken care of, like making sure we had vans to go out there, and making sure that we kind of had a schedule for the weekend, contacting the other seminary to make sure we had food and housing while we were out there, stuff like that, and then setting up the soccer practice and getting a coach, whatnot, stuff like that. And so before the tournament, I was just kind of like pretty busy, just like trying to get all the ducks in a row for the weekend.
Yeah, those kind of things can be pretty hectic.
For some reason, it's like it seemed like when I was thinking about it, I was like, this is really simple. Like, and then I was like, well, but it is a little bit time consuming. So that's kind of what I was doing before. And then we went out there, and 20 minutes into the first game, it was a corner kick. I was running, the ball was coming in. I was running towards the ball, and I kind of planted my left foot to try to flick the soccer ball further into the 18-yard box so that someone else could get it and shoot it. And when I planted my left foot and the ball was coming to my foot, the other goalie basically came through my leg, and it just collapsed and folded in a direction it wasn't supposed to. And went to the hospital, ended up having a broken leg and a few pretty messed up knee ligaments
Right.
as well. So after that weekend, I came back, had surgery a week later, and then was staying at my parents' house for like 2 weeks before I moved back into the seminary house at Christ the King, and kind of started school up again.
Right.
So it's kind of been pretty hectic, not really hectic, but just like crazy.
Right.
Just been crazy
Yeah, just
past couple
because
weeks.
everything has been turned on its head for you.
Right. Yeah. It's like, how am I going to finish the semester? You know, kind of like what's the rest of this year going to look like?
Right.
And I mean, honestly, it's just kind of been taking it one day at a time. Right.
It's kind of funny though, or not really funny, but also just really beautiful, I think, to see how the seminary community has really come together because of this, right?
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
So, number one, it was
so
hilarious
blessed.
because the team that we were playing was one of our rivals, right? And we ended up winning the game. So it was like Micah was, it was a hero.
Yeah.
But
I was like sitting in the hospital, like waiting for the X-rays to come back and stuff like that, and I was like checking my phone to like see like like what's gonna happen in this game. Like we have to win. Like we never could beat this team, and they're a bunch of jerks. And, they're not really that mean, but no. But they always beat us. And so we were sick of losing.
Right.
So when I finally got the text, that we won 3-1, I just like went nuts.
Right.
And the doctor's like, "Are you okay? Like, what's going? Why are you cheering? You have a broken leg and you're sitting in my chair in the doctor's office." And I'm like, "We won the game. Let's go."
Right. And as soon as you came back, it was almost like we were putting you up on like a parade, like pedestal, like we were ready to celebrate.
It was horrible.
But one of the funniest things that I thought was so great was Micah obviously can't bend his knee, right? So when he sits down, he usually has to be on like a couch or on like some sort of lounge chair to prop up his leg, and the classroom chairs are obviously not conducive for that.
Oh
and
gosh,
so
this was
there was a group of guys that went into the basement of the seminary kind of hangout room where we have a bunch of lounge chairs, and they carried a lounge chair across campus into the classroom. So in Micah's classroom, there is now this massive like lazy boy lounge chair for him to sit in for classes.
Yeah, our whole class now is like we have student council at the seminary, and they have meetings and stuff like that, and so our whole class is now pushing for like everyone in theology to have a recliner in the classroom. We're joking. We're like, yeah, like the rest of the class really needs to be in solidarity with Micah as he's suffering. And so I think it's only right and just that we all should be sitting in a lounge chair during the classroom.
Last year was standing desks. Now it's lounge chairs.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, and the one thing too that I've always noticed is because you're obviously having to walk around with the crutches everywhere.
Oh, I just make a bunch of noise.
You're always on everybody's mind, because no matter where you are, we can hear you from a mile away coming down the hall or in the chapel. It's like, oh, Micah's in the chapel now.
Yeah. It's like, oh man, I wish he would stop making so much noise.
No, it's like, oh man, he needs prayers.
Yeah. So, as you can hear, it's humbling. But I do feel really blessed, and I've felt extremely loved by the seminary community. It's nothing but gratitude in my heart for sure. Just seeing the ways that my family served me, and then also the brothers at the seminary have served me too. It's just kind of like it's like wow. It's almost like there's no words. It's like, man, God loves me. These men, my brothers, love me. Like, I'm blessed. Mm-hmm. There's a certain freedom there. So, yeah, so kind of what we wanted to kind of just not really talk a little bit about this, because there's a lot of grace here. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's kind of what we just wanted to talk a little bit about suffering on the podcast today.
Right.
And this is a question on everyone's heart. Like this is the when it comes down to it, you talk to a lot of people, and the reason that they don't believe in God, or the reason that they've left the church, is because why would a good God allow people to suffer?
Right.
Why is it a part of our lives? And it's kind of the question that's on everybody's heart. Either when you're going through it, or when you see someone else go through it, and I'm not talking just about like a broken leg, with
Right.
our medical technology, like it ends up not being a huge deal, honestly. It hurts. Yes. There's discomfort. Your life is interrupted, but I know that like a year from now, I'll probably be back on my feet.
Right.
We're talking about something much worse, like suffering way beyond this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The spiritual suffering.
Spiritual suffering,
Psychological.
psychological suffering, natural disasters,
Or physical suffering that can't be healed.
Yeah,
Right.
like cancer, like all these different things, like these human realities that we're faced with, whether we like it or not. Like there's no avoiding it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a question is like, why? Why does God allow this to happen? And that's the question I asked when I was sitting in the hospital. Lord, why did you do that? Like, why did you allow this to happen? I was kind of laughing because I was praying for safety, like the whole week leading up to the tournament. And I went into Monsignor Leone, or one of our spiritual fathers, and asked him to pray for me for the team as we headed out. And so when it happened, it's like, wow, dang, all right, why, Lord? And so, unfortunately, kind of like one of the things that happens when we get injured or when we're going through a lot is we kind of start to turn inwards. And this is kind of what was happening to me. I was like, Lord, what are you going to do in my life because of this? Or like, what grace are you going to bring that I can see, kind of just like starting to become selfish. And, and wanting to see like why he did allow for it. And,
like, what are you trying to teach me, God? Like,
what are you trying to teach me? How are you going to change my life, convert my heart, and all these different things? And the one thing I kept hearing is, it's not about you. It's not about you. And I was like, all right, and it's true. Like I was praying with the story of Lazarus during these past couple of weeks. It's kind of a passage I like to go back to. It's when so basically, like, most people probably know the story of Lazarus in the Gospels, but for those who don't, Lazarus is the brother of Martha and Mary. Mary is the one who anoints Jesus' feet before the crucifixion, before the Paschal event, before the Last Supper and the crucifixion and stuff like that. And Martha's her sister. And there's another passage with Martha and Mary where Martha is the one who's like serving Jesus, and Mary's the one at the feet. Right. And Martha's like, come on, Jesus, like make Mary come up and serve with me and do something around here.
Help with the dishes.
Yeah. So at this point, Lazarus has fallen ill, and it looks pretty serious by the looks of it. And so Martha and Mary send for Jesus, because Jesus isn't in the town. He's not in Bethany with them right now. Right. And what Jesus hears this, but he turns to his disciples and he says, this illness is not unto death, but for the glory of God. And that's when it kind of hit me. It's like, yeah, this is not about me. This is about the glory of God. Like, and even if I didn't have a broken leg, my life is not about me. It's about the glory of God. This is the principle and foundation for St. Ignatius of Loyola. He says, man is created to praise, love, and reverence God. And everything that helps him towards this end, he should do. And everything that inhibits him from achieving this end, he should reject. Right? And so when it comes down to it, it's like, that's what it's about. It's about the greater glory of God. So that's kind of where I was at.
Right.
But kind of the question still remains though, why, Lord? Why do you allow for us to suffer in this way?
Yeah. And so recently, Micah and I have actually been trying to do a consecration to the divine mercy, or to merciful love, through Saint Therese. It's a book. It's the same author that did the 33 Days to Morning Glory.
Yeah, Father Michael Gately.
Right. And obviously this book is all about Therese and her little way, right?
Yep.
And she mentions this. She mentions this same reality, right? Of the big question, why the suffering that's in people's lives, right? And she brought up this,
and our own littleness, our own frailty,
right,
our own weakness, all of these different things,
right. And she brings up this this beautiful image. It was a letter that she was responding to one of the other sisters, I believe, where she mentions, I am this little bird, right? But I have the God has given me the heart of an eagle. But I am no eagle, right?
Yeah.
And he has supplied me with the graces, which can come in the form of suffering, to elevate this little bird to be an eagle, not for her own sake, or even what she can give to God necessarily, but for the greater glory of God, so that others may see this bird. And she doesn't put it this way. This is kind of my way of explaining it, but when others see this bird soaring as high as the eagles, this bird that is clearly not an eagle, they know that bird is not flying of its own power, but of the power of God. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly right. It's like God chooses, this is all over like the Psalms. This is Mary's Magnificat. In the first part of Luke's gospel, God lifts up the lowly,
right?
And humbles the proud in their conceit. And this is just kind of like a scandal when we think about, like, it's pretty crazy that God has chosen human beings to participate in salvation of men in general. God not only lifts up the lowly, but he became lowly. And because he became man, he himself is God. He himself is God. He doesn't need anyone. He's infinitely good and infinitely perfect in himself. But he chose to become man. And because he became man, he put himself in a place of vulnerability where he needed other people.
Right.
Especially when he was a baby. Like when he was a baby, like he couldn't even, like he had to rely on other people to feed him.
Right.
And this is God that we're talking about. Like, what a scandal.
Right.
Like, this is like, no wonder, like, sometimes it's like, it's so hard for people to believe in the Christian God, is because the Christian God became man. What?
Right.
That's blasphemy, right?
Right.
No, this is the God who loves us, right? So he doesn't need us, but he chose to need us because he knows that we, like, in a sense, need to be needed.
Yeah.
Like,
that is a beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah. It's like, we appreciate that. You know what I mean? It's like, that's one way that we're able to, like, be in relationship with God in that sense.
Right. And St. Paul actually even mentions this in his epistles as well, right? I fill in what is lacking in the suffering of Christ, right?
Yeah.
And of course, that doesn't mean that Christ's death and resurrection was lacking in some merit, right?
Right.
But
No.
what he's saying is that the Lord has allowed him to participate in that, and he brings that to those that otherwise might not have received that grace, right?
Right. Yeah. And yeah, we see it with St. Paul. And then, I mean, the biggest example of this is Mary.
It's Mary,
It's like
right?
Mary is the one who, like, God's plan of salvation, like, relied on her. Yes. You know, and this, I mean, it's kind of strange because it's like Mary still had the free will to say yes or no.
Right.
But I mean, God knew from all eternity that she would say yes, but that didn't impede Mary's freedom. She still had to say yes.
Right.
And God chose to allow his plan to be reliant upon this yes in a certain sense. And God could have chose to save the world in any way he wanted to, but he chose this way. And so he invites Mary to participate in the salvation of mankind,
Right.
From how we had fallen in the
Right.
garden. He invites us to be renewed, to find life, to find freedom, and he invites us to not only be the receivers of that, but to help with it.
Right.
And so we see that not only with Mary's fiat, with Mary's yes at the beginning, but throughout the rest of Mary's life. Mary is consistently there throughout everything, and most especially during the Passion,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then even more particularly at the cross, Mary is there. And so we have Mary's example, but we not only have Mary's example, but Simon of Cyrene too.
Right. Especially, yeah, particularly with the carrying of the cross, right?
Yeah. And so,
And what's crazy to think about this too is, so I think Simon of Cyrene, when he is called to carry the cross for Jesus in the midst of the Passion, I think a lot of things that you may read about it, whether it be a novena on the Passion or something like that, they often like, oh, put yourself in the place of Simon as like this spiritual symbol. And it's like, yeah, that's really beautiful, right? In the sense of our participation in the Passion with Jesus, right?
yeah.
But there's also just this crazy reality of just Simon actually needed to help Jesus. Like Jesus needed help. And
Yeah.
a human being, not even Mary, who's like immaculate, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't even just like this immaculate human being. It was
some
just
random
some dude.
Jew at the time of Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
How scandalous is that, right?
Yeah.
That this sinful man, because he happened to be walking by, was called to participate in the salvation of mankind.
Yeah. The event that saved us, the Passion, the carrying of the cross and the crucifixion. Simon was an integral part of that. And God chose to invite him into that. And Simon had the choice too. Again, it comes back to Simon could have said no. He could have walked away.
Right.
He could have said, I don't know who you are. I don't know. Like, I've heard about you. Maybe I know that this definitely isn't just. You probably don't deserve this. I don't want to be any part of this though right now. You know, like he could have chosen that, but he chose to enter into it. And that cross wasn't light. He didn't just like come up to it and just, oh, okay, you know, like I'm just going to carry it up the hill. Like, don't worry, Jesus, I got it. He put it like that cross weighed so much, like he put himself under it, the weight of it, and chose to walk next to Jesus.
Right.
Side by side. And when we experience suffering in our life, that same invitation is being offered. That same invitation. And we have the choice of whether we're going to reject it, whether we're going to like turn in on ourselves, kind of like fall into self-pity, or we can turn look at Jesus and see the love that he has for us on his face as he's enduring his passion, and choose to walk with him, choose to carry the cross with him. And this is incredible. In this sense, we have the opportunity to console the heart of Jesus.
I remember a long time ago I was given a prayer by Teresa of Avila, or it's written by Teresa of Avila, and it's particularly addressing this, right? The suffering as or a participation in Christ's suffering as a consolation to his Sacred Heart, right?
Yeah.
And so
it's like, and you think about it at this point, like when Christ is going through his suffering, everyone's left him.
Right, exactly.
Basically, everyone has left him. His disciple, like a couple of his disciples denied him. One handed him over. The disciples that he thought were following him ended up turning on him and handing him over to be crucified. And so when Veronica wipes his face, when Simon of Cyrene comes, helps him carry this cross, what greater consolation to his human heart in that sense,
right,
is there, you know?
Right. And I want to read a little excerpt of this prayer because it's quite long, but I'll just read the part of it that pertains to this.
Perfect.
So she says, "How much Jesus suffered, persecuted by some, spat upon by others, denied by his friends, and even deserted by them, with none to take his part, frozen with the cold and left so completely alone, that you may well comfort each other. Look upon him bending under the weight of the cross, not even allowed to take a breath. He will look upon you with his lovely and compassionate eyes full of tears, and in comforting your grief will forget his own, because you are bearing him company in order to comfort him, and turning your head to look upon him."
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teresa of Avila, my goodness.
Yeah. Because Jesus' heart isn't the only thing that's consoled. When we realize we're not alone in our suffering, what greater consolation is there than that?
Right.
You know, like someone is with us. Someone is walking with us. Yeah, and that's like the great choice that we have, you know, and
Right.
It's beautiful, you know. And one other point that we saw from Saint Therese is that like it's not just like when we're suffering that we can come to console the heart of Jesus. You know what I mean? It's like anytime we come to visit him in the tabernacle, anytime we come to pray, like we enter into that reality that we want to spend time with him, that we want to be with him. And especially like when we meditate upon the cross or something like that, when we come to the foot of the cross and we say, Jesus, I want to be here with you. Your love like is so grand. Your love is overflowing like in this moment. And so many people have chosen to reject this love, this free gift of grace. I want to come here and receive all of that. You know, like I want to be here at the foot of the cross. It's crazy. And that's like, that's the choice that we have, right? Not just when we're suffering, but just in life in general is
right.
is
That should
we
be...
have we have the choice of whether we're going to receive the love of Christ or reject it.
Right.
You know,
it's the core of the Christian life of prayer, right?
Yeah.
Is
the core of our salvation,
mm-hmm.
right? Because that the love is what transforms us. You know, the participation in his life is what transforms us. God is dying, like literally he died to give it to us.
Right.
He's dying to give it to us, longing to give it to us. all we have to do is say yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And Therese, again, in her spirituality, she talks about the wanting to console the heart of Jesus through receiving the graces that have been rejected, right? Seeing so many that choose to reject Christ, reject his love, and how much that hurts the Sacred Heart.
Yeah, and we know this just on a level of relationship like that we experience in our own life.
Right.
Is like when we're trying to love someone, like we'll just use this example. When my brother walks into my room and is like, "Hey, do you need anything right now? Like, I know you're lying on your bed. Like, is there anything I can get you?" It's like, "No, I'm fine. I can do it myself." That hurts.
Right.
Yeah, that hurts because it's like there's a certain level of vulnerability that it takes to like offer that.
Right. And
because you're offering part of yourself, you're offering a gift.
Right. And Therese had the boldness, the audacity even, to confront God and be like, I want to love you the most. And I want to receive all of the love that others have rejected. And whatever consequences that may bring, I want to console your heart.
Yeah. I offer myself to your merciful love.
Right. Yes. And that's the
incredible.
Key right there. Yeah. It's actually funny. So because I've never had a devotion to Therese. I was telling Micah earlier, like going through this book has been pretty powerful for me. And I just kind of explained like, Therese is she just broke into my heart and just destroyed everything. She's rearranging all the furniture and just making a mess of my heart. And she's like, oh, what a brat in the best, like loving sense possible. But when I first encountered this and started to understand this offering, how Therese would offer herself for the merciful love of Jesus, I couldn't help but think of this hilarious time. So I was in Ireland. It was a couple years ago. The analogy is perfect. I was in Ireland a couple years ago, and we went to the Guinness factory, which, if you've ever been there, it's this vast, massive factory, and they have this. There's hundreds and hundreds of people going in and out of there all the time for the tours, right? Mm-hmm. And the tour takes forever, and you got to book ahead of time, and they go in like these massive groups, and it's just chaos and everything. And once you're done making your rounds through the tour, you get to this tower that they built at the top. It's like almost like a panoramic view kind of bar, right? There's a bar in the center and a bunch of tables, and you get this beautiful panoramic view of the whole factory, which is just massive, right?
Yeah.
And when you arrive, they stamp your wrist when you go up to the bar, and they give you a full, like 16-ounce glass of freshly brewed Guinness beer, right?
Yeah.
And it's delicious, right? Because Guinness in the States,
Guinness is great, but when it's like from
Ireland,
tap,
it's
like,
totally different.
Yeah.
Like
when it hasn't been shipped overseas,
right? It's just crazy. It's not even the same beer. But anyway, so we were with one of our friends, one of my best friend that I was with. He knew this family in Tullamore that was with us on this tour. And he's like, I have a terrible Irish accent, by the way, so just bear with me. But he's like, well, lads, I have this great secret. Just follow my lead. And what he would do is, so again, in this bar, there's hundreds of tourists at all times.
Right,
It's just chaos. You can barely even hear the guy next to you when you're talking to each other. But, and they're all getting their one glass of Guinness beer. And then they will pose, take a selfie. They'll post it on Snapchat, whatever. And then they put the beer back on the table, and then they walk away. Because 90% of the people in that factory don't even like Guinness. They're just there to get the Instagram picture, to get the little Snapchat.
Say I was there.
And that's it. And so this Irishman, he's leading us around the bar, just collecting everybody's leftover beer. And he's like, yeah, we don't want the bartender to get offended. Like we should drink all of these. Like and this is such a great analogy for this,
Yeah. Not to like compare the love of God to beer, but
no,
but
we're
just like the
definitely comparing
goodness.
it to beer. It's the nectar. It's the nectar of God.
Yeah.
But
But in this case, like how much more so with the love of God?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But but it's so funny because this analogy works perfectly too, because there are so many like what this tourist that's taking a picture of himself with the Guinness and not actually drinking the glass. What is he doing? He's consumed with himself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We
And
don't
he
want to
doesn't
judge his heart or
realize-
anything, but like
right.
this is kind of what's happening.
Right.
You know?
At least in the analogy, right?
Right.
And in this moment, he refuses or doesn't even realize the beauty that he has in this glass, which is this great
This great
Guinness.
freshly brewed Guinness.
Right. And in the same sense, the grace of God, like how many of us, the Lord pours out his love upon us every day, every moment, and we are not present to receive it,
Yeah.
or we don't acknowledge it, and we take a little Snapchat
We're turned in on
photo
ourselves. Like this was me at the beginning of like what I was just talking about.
Right.
Like I was so turned in on myself that I wasn't even open to like what God was wanting to do. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
And Therese had the boldness to run around the bar and collect all the beer that wasn't being dranken, whatever, for the sake of the bartender, to console his heart.
Oh man, it's kind of cheesy, kind of funny. And so like on a like way more serious note, like that's kind of the point of us coming to Jesus and saying, I want like everything that you're giving out, I don't want it to be in vain. Like
Right.
I want it to be received. I want it to be poured forth into the world in some way. You know what I mean? Like if this person is denying, like allow me to receive it so that I can like, so your glory can still be shown in the world, and so that others can still like come to know you who are rejecting you through like some sort of
Right.
through witnessing your glory,
Right.
like
Exactly.
in someone's life,
through
you know?
through seeing the bird that is flying as high as the eagles.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, man, that's awesome. And so that's the grace being offered. That's the grace being offered, and this is what we have to choose to accept and to bring ourselves to open our hearts up to receive the love of God, to be transformed.
Right.
And sometimes like it takes us coming to this point of suffering to have our hearts opened to receive it.
Right.
And this is I think what we'll close with is in chapter 15 of Luke's gospel. God talks about going after the lost sheep, going after the one who got away, and leaving the 99. This is what he's doing in our suffering, right? God doesn't want to see us suffer. He like that hurts his heart. He loves us so much. Like he doesn't want that to happen. But he's a good father. He allows for it because he knows that it'll slow us down to hear his voice. It'll slow us down, take away the distractions, bring our eyes back to him. Bring our eyes back to his merciful gaze of love. Amidst it, because we're not consumed with all the things that we have to take care of. During these past 3 weeks, the majority of the time that I've spent is on a couch or a bed. And the one thing I've been able to do is pray, right? And that's like God comes after, like his love, like it's just is so incredible that he's willing to go to these lengths to bring us to everlasting life, to save our souls. Like he's willing to go into the wilderness with us, to go way beyond like what we'd ever expect. And this is the heart of God the Father, you know. Yeah, and I mean, for myself, I saw this heart of God the Father in my dad during these past couple weeks, because my dad's been in my mom, but there's just something special about the love of the Father, like
right.
in times like these. And so my dad has been with me every single step of the way. You know, he's sitting next to me on the couch, talking with me, and I don't know, doing anything that I needed really, and helping me with PT and bending my knee and doing different stuff like that. And I could tell, like my dad didn't want to see me in pain. He didn't like seeing me like just cringing as I'm trying to like bring my knee up, you know, do something so simple. But he knew that if I was ever going to walk again, if I was ever going to be able to go skiing with him again, if I was ever going to be if he was ever going to be able to see me back on the soccer field, something like that, that I was going to have to do this. And so he pushed me, and he didn't just like tell me to do it and walk away. He was there supporting my leg and lifting it up and bringing it back down. And this is the heart of the Father. The one, like the Father who's going to be with us in our suffering, because he knows that it's necessary for a greater good. So yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
This is it. Like our suffering is not in vain.
Right. Yeah.
We can take great hope, great faith in that reality.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We
well, like I said, it's been great being back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's also just been really good for us to have you back.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah, it's again, it's been just inspiring to see the seminary step up, to really come together for you.
Totally.
But also, I think to just see you grow, and to see all of us grow in your suffering. Like it's not about you, Micah.
It's not about me.
It's affecting all of our lives, and it's just it's been a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, for the greater glory of God.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about that. Cool. Well, if you have any questions, any comments about this episode, about past episodes, if you want more information on this Father Michael Gately book that we've been talking about, like we've mentioned, we have that new email.
Right.
Don't be afraid to contact us. We'll be checking it, and
and the email is sonsofourspodcast@gmail.com. So
yeah, pretty easy to remember.
Yeah, highly recommend the 33 days for merciful love.
Yeah,
if you got 33 spare days on your hand, it's great.
Yeah, and they're quick reflections.
Yeah, it takes 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's really cool, but they're great meditations, as we've been talking about. So
maybe she'll come into your heart and trash the place, rearrange all the furniture, and change your life as you know it.
Don't be afraid to say yes.
Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you, Micah, for coming on the podcast today. And
yeah,
it's funny because you're a host, but I'm treating you as a guest. But Anyway, we got some good stuff coming up for you. Again, sorry for kind of the inconsistency of the episodes. Just kind of expect that going on for the future. But thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Sons of Ours podcast.
And that is ours with an A.
We're never letting that go, Ian.
Never. See you next time.
Bye-bye.